Welcome once again to this exciting edition of the Ridgefield Playhouse Diversity Film Series. This is the bonus content, and I am your host, Cheryl Washington. Always delighted to be with you because I get a chance to learn a lot about some of the films that we discuss in terms of how it influences our culture. And this time around, we're going to talk about one of my favorite films, and I hope yours as well, Selena. In fact, I had the chance to interview Jennifer Lopez when she played the starring role. And I'm going to talk with a couple of people who have now become my new best friends. And we're going to talk about not just the movie, but also the legacy of Selena. Joining me right now is Joe Leydon. He's in his cowboy hat. He's all set to go. He's senior writer of Cowboys and Indians magazine. And Rodney Alejandro, who was the chair of the Songwriting Department of Berklee College of Music. And he was a dear friend of Selena. And gentlemen, I'm so happy to be with you today. And thank you for joining us with the Ridgefield Playhouse. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. I did not get the memo to wear the hat, Joe, but you're wearing it so well. I got to tell you.
Look, Cowboys and Indians. I mean, it's a natural outgrowth for me. It used to be whenever I'd go to a film festival, and I'd find out I was from Houston. The first question they'd ask is, "Oh yeah, where's your horse?"
Well, we don't have to worry about that today, right?
There you go.
Well, let's talk about this movie because this movie certainly was explosive. It just enabled someone in the caliber of Jennifer Lopez, who we just shortened to J-Lo these days, as someone who just made such a tremendous impact. And I remember when I had interviewed her back in 1997 when the film made its debut, she was very, how can I put it, almost demure, which kind of surprised me. But, you know, young ingenue, that's how things go. But she really did channel herself into Selena in a way that I think is just prophetic, if you will. And I want to have you to discuss what it was like for you to visualize someone like Jennifer Lopez on the screen to embody Selena. And then I want to talk about the legacy of Selena. So I'm going to start with you, Rodney, because you actually were quite friendly with the family. You knew her. You were on the circuit with her. You met her when you knew her when she was about 16. You both were about 16 years old. So give me a little thumbnail sketch, if you will, about your relationship with her and the intimacy therein.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we met on gigs. Basically, we were in the Tejano market. That was a circuit that plays around Texas. And at that time in the late and early 90s, yeah, you know, we would all play dances together, right? Selena and Los Dinos was the name of the group at the time. So that's where we initially met. And her group and our group were kind of the newer kids on the block at the time. There were some established artists that were moving along, and we were trying to get into that pop world, you know, bring more of that pop influence into our music at the time. And she'd always, even from that time we met, you know, she had similar aspirations to what we were trying to do. So this is one reason we played a lot together. But she was very warm. She was very, you know, just welcoming. We would always say, man, there's no one has ever, she would never seem to get upset, whether it was a fan who, you know, might have crossed the line saying something. She was always, you know, amazing how she could handle that situation, you know, and she was just super, super charming. You know, you hang out with her and the room was just full of light. So.
Did that come primarily, do you think, from her parents, her upbringing? Where do you attribute that, Rodney?
Yeah, I knew her family as well. And again, they're nice people as well, but she just had a sparkle. You know, there was just, you know, some artists just have ability, an innate ability to communicate with people on stage and off stage. You know, for some, it can be an act on stage, and for others, it's an act off stage. But in her particular case, it seemed to be the same person on both sides. So very genuine, very authentic. And I think she was willing to allow herself to be, you know, she's basically, this is who I am on stage, off stage. And the people really were drawn to that.
What do you think it was about her, Joe, that really enabled people to just be drawn into it, as Rodney just articulated so well? What do you think it is that really set her apart from maybe others?
Well, I visited the set of the movie Selena when it was shot in San Antonio, and I talked to many people who had done their research. A few people actually known. Edward James Olmos had chatted her up at various award ceremonies. And what I got, particularly from Jennifer Lopez, is Selena made a lot of young Hispanic women proud of themselves, gave them agency. The idea that they weren't the slim blonde archetype or stereotype. They had curves, they had big butts. And I can say that because, uh, Jennifer Lopez, a goodly part of our conversation on the set, she just got into this riff on the fact that when she first started out in movies, she was advised by more than one casting agent. She should really, uh, how can I put this diplomatically, reduce the size of her derriere.
Mm.
That she should try to slim down and look more, well,
More
non,
Anglo?
not more Anglo.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I guess that's the perfect way of putting it.
Mhm, mhm.
And that, and this is something as a white dude. I mean, I guess you all noticed. I'm the token white person. Now, if I were any whiter, I would be translucent. But the idea that young women saw themselves,
Mm.
in Selena, and of course they loved her music, and the idea that with compounding the tragedy, compounding the tragedies, here was an icon in the making. She had already reached this status
Mhm.
among her fans, and she was about ready to make the crossover. She was about ready to do an entire English language album. She had already, done things like her historic concert at the Astrodome, where she broke attendance records. I mean, that had been set by people like George Strait. She had a medley of disco hits. I mean, she was really, drawing everybody into the under the tent. And then, this loss. So
Mm.
not only, this talent gone ridiculously too soon, but this self affirmation symbol for a
Yes,
young woman was cruelly gone too soon.
absolutely. Rodney, weren't you at the time writing something for Selena at the time of her untimely death? If I can just
Yes, we
reiterate
were,
that.
we'd worked on music before together. I mean, part of it stemmed from me being on the road together and jamming together at sound checks and those kinds of things with her brother AB and the band and all. And one day she's like, "Why don't you come down to Corpus and let's finish this, let's finish something, let's do something, right?" So I flew down there in anticipation that we are going to just work on something we've been jamming on, but we ended up starting a whole fresh idea. And this was prior to her even moving fully into the English market. We're kind of just experimenting with, what we were hearing at the time, like Prince and The Time and, Taylor Dane and Expose, all these artists of that era, that 80s breakbeat era, and just like, how do we influence that into this sound, right? And as Joe was mentioned, how she brought everybody under the tent. The idea was, at that time in our circuit, you had to play a little bit of a lot of things, right? And even though Tejano was the market, you would change it up. So this is what helped influence our work in the studio. So we ended up working on a tune called Amame that ended up on the Entre Mi Mundo album.
Yes.
That, again, it was a dance track. It was, new for the time. And so that was like how it was. Then we kept, seeing each other on the road, trading ideas and those kinds of things, along with, again, her brother was a huge influence in designing the sound that she became the queen of cumbia, right? And then during that era, I actually saw her a few days before at a show. We were talking about a new song that we were working on. I was at home working in the studio when we got the news
Mm.
of what happened. So needless to say, at first we didn't believe it because it was in and around April Fools, and we just thought, whatever. But unfortunately, it was true. So you can imagine, lots of sadness came
There was
over us.
reaction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but to be in that moment, knowing that, she was, she had become an icon for our community. And Joe was right. A lot of young women saw themselves in her. And the bigger thing was she was American born Mexican,
Mm.
and an entire community of people that respected their parents' traditions, but we're also developing our own traditions. I'm American born Mexican. And so it's like we have, yeah, we like the culture and we're down with it, but we're also adapting new things. So the music
Sure.
was changing and she was part of the front runner of changing that idea.
Rodney, can I ask a question? Because this was brought up while I was on the location, and I've seen it printed as fact, but maybe it's just part of the legend. Uh, she really didn't speak Spanish that well. Is that correct? That she
Correct.
actually had to learn some of her early songs phonetically?
I
Yeah.
read that too. Yes.
Yeah, she was not fluent per se in Spanish because she's an English household. Her parents definitely were fluent in Spanish, but again, growing up in America, like you do most next generations, you adapt the language as you do, right? But that became part of her charm, right? She knew she had to do radio interviews, and if you didn't speak Spanish in those days on those stations, they wouldn't play you.
I was going to say, weren't they pretty strict about that? If you didn't have that nuance,
Correct. They didn't believe you, right? But she found a way to charm them, right? She would Spanglish it in an interview, and then she's like everywhere, right? She just, and that's what I'm saying. She was that kind of light that
right?
even the hardest ones of saying, "Oh, you don't know the language, you're not really one of us," kind of idea. They're like, you can't help it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So yeah, she wasn't a technical Spanish speaker, but she learned the language and sung it as if, I mean, it was in her blood.
Right, right.
There was going to be not a proper pronunciation, but through practice, she did pick up Spanish over time and began to speak it a little bit more. But those
Hmm.
early days was just charm. She was charming.
Hmm.
And
Joe, may I ask where you were when you got the news that Selena
I
had
was at
passed?
home. I didn't have tickets to the concert. I will always kick myself for that. But I mean, as I say, it was phenomenal. I mean, they sold out like yesterday
Mhm.
when the announcement was made, and I was shocked. It was on the evening. It was the evening newscast,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and a friend of mine who was the stringer for Newsweek here in town. I got this call at home. Did I have any Selena? Back then we had, cassette tapes. Did you
Right.
have any tapes? Because she had no idea who Selena was. And I said, well, I've got one, it's like, she came over and picked it up,
Mhm.
and so she got, a crash course in Selena. But I mean, the city practically, Houston, I'm based in,
Mhm. Right.
and the city practically went into mourning.
Mm.
And like I say, she was just beginning to make
The crossover.
Make
the
that
cross.
mark. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of crossovers, this has kind of gotten lost in the rush, but she recorded this really bouncy, fun song with David Byrne of the Talking Heads called
Really?
God's Child, and it was for the movie Blue in the Face, and it was just this happy celebratory type song. And I still had the promotional CD for that.
Wait,
Some
was that in English?
oh
Did she
well,
record in English?
he was singing in English, and then she would sing uh, part of it in Spanish, but then the chorus, they would sing together in English, and it's I realize that's not like number one in the hearts of Selena fans. It's like, maybe 114 or something like that.
Mhm.
But I think, Roddy, I don't know if you'd agree with me on that. That just gives you just an inkling of how easily she could have made the
And
trip.
how far she had gone and how far she
Yeah.
would keep going, because that really is the lexicon in terms of what she explored and what she was able to bring to several generations. I mean,
Mhm, mhm.
I come from an African American background, yet I was very familiar with her music, and it was penetrating. And,
Oh
and
yes.
when you look at the film and you see the images of the young people, in particular, young girls too, Latinas in particular, who really reacted
Mhm.
strongly to that news, and I can only think that it would mimic almost realistically to what took place in real life. I mean, talk about art
Oh,
imitating life. That was it. I mean, you could not underestimate the capacity of what she meant.
Yeah, we sometimes sit around and talk with all of us who come from that same circuit. If we'd have had social media at the time,
Oh
Oh,
gosh,
oh,
are you
oh.
kidding me?
you went viral when viral was analog. You
Right,
know what I mean?
Oh,
exactly. I
can you
mean,
imagine her doing TikTok?
right,
Just dancing to.
right,
Oh my
right.
lord!
Well, can we talk a little bit about that too? Because I mean, you talked about the curvaceousness of her body, and body image back then wasn't as strong as it is today. I mean, we get in trouble for saying certain things, and you got to be body conscious. But looking at her and seeing her move and gyrate on the stage, there was no one like her at that age.
No.
She was impeccable.
She was very dynamic on stage, and it wasn't overly sexual, right? It was
Right.
sexy,
There was
right?
an innocence to it.
Correct, and she was very mature about it, right?
Mhm,
And she carried herself in that way, and I think that is another selling point for not only the young people, but then the older people who went to her shows as well, right? And again, this filling that dome was not just one particular generation; it was multi-generational that were in the room when she was there. So to appeal to a cross section of a generation, you can't just be overtly kind of in either area, right? You can't
Right,
be
right,
too
right.
old, you can't be too young, you can't be too over sexual. So she found the balance in the way she presented herself to everyone that attracted, again, multiple generations in the same family.
Well, you look
Absolutely.
at the rodeo shows, and she was the rodeo show. Uh, I mean, that is almost like legendary for it's sort of like giving the imprimatur to an act. Like, okay, you've reached a point now. Whether you're doing rap, whether you're doing Tejano, whether you're doing rock and roll or country, you've reached a point where your music is universal.
Mhm,
It's, I mean, like Elvis Presley
mhm.
played there early in his career. And I keep going back to this that she set attendance records,
Yeah.
and with good reason. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the video of that concert, but I mean, you were talking about social media. I mean, that would have been nothing but YouTube videos. And they would have been dropping like manna from heaven for weeks if not months afterwards. And I don't want to keep going back to the tragedy, because I mean
Mhm.
the movie's a celebration
Mhm.
Yes,
of
yes.
Selena on many ways. On the other hand, I'll tell you up front, just about everybody who was on that set said, we're happy we're here, we're happy we're paying tribute to Selena, but you know what, this is the movie we wish we weren't
That we
making.
didn't have to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Gregory
right.
Nava, the director
Mhm.
of El Norte and Mi Familia, uh, just told me in point blank. I said, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm the one telling the story,
Mhm.
but I really wish I weren't making this movie.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. When I was reading and doing my research on the film and on Selena, I didn't realize that there were about 21,000 young women who auditioned for the part of Selena, second to Gone with the Wind. I didn't know that. Can you imagine? Where did they find it? Out of all of those women who auditioned to pluck a young Jennifer Lopez out of that, what does that say about her strength and her power and her tenacity and her vivacious spirit? What does it say about her?
It says how special she was. There
Okay.
just there isn't another, right? And all due respect to Jennifer Lopez, she did a great job in the acting career of representing her.
Mhm.
At the same time, Selena, again, she was building something that no one had heard about until, unfortunately, the tragedy, right?
Mm.
There's a whole culture of people who knew how big she was. This is where the 21,000 come from, right? So the idea of that she was just that special. You were going to have to search far and wide to find someone who could fill those shoes, pretty much.
And plus the fact that the movie was made within 2 years of her death. So it was like, the producers and direct, we better get this right, because the memory of, her life and her death is so fresh in so many people's minds. And if we put somebody up there who, just doesn't do the legend justice, we're going to get, stones tossed.
Right. And here's the thing also, Joe, because she was not Mexican or Mexican American, and she was New York Puerto Rican or New York Rican, I think that's how you pronounce it. She took a lot of heat for that.
Oh yes,
because from the media, the Mexican media, from filmmakers. And just average people who said, no, that's not the culture.
Well, you raise a good point that, I just put it diplomatically. That movie, if it were made today, would not be cast that way.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I mean, the audience for that movie would not accept that cast. And I mean, Jennifer Lopez was wonderful in the part, and I all power to her, and that did, put her career, on a different level. But no, and it makes you wonder. Okay, who would you cast today?
Good question. That's a good question.
You gotta remember, and Selena was multi-talented, right? She sang, she danced, she could do some acting, right? She's one of those rare ones in that way. So then that even narrows your search even more within that community.
Exactly, you're right. I was reading something else. I'm always reading. But last year, let me get my notes here. Selena was selected for preservation in the United States Film Registry by the Library of Congress. I see you nodding your head, Rodney, as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Now, see, to me, it's not just an ordinary movie, with just a story about this young girl who rose to fame and whose career was shot down too soon. But look at the lifelong, timeless, long-lasting effect that the film has on the culture. Look at that. I mean, does it get any better than that? That's quite an endorsement.
No, absolutely. Somewhat 20-something years later,
right?
And here we are even discussing it.
Still talking about it.
Not every entertainer who's had that career and even unfortunate passing maybe too soon has that legacy, right? So I think it not only goes to how well the film tells the story and not only entertaining but informing. That people wanted to know more. Like, where did she come from? How do we miss this? How do we only find out with this American single that this is who she was, or that through this tragedy, that's who she is, right? So I think it's very important that she is recognized as that. She was an icon in our industry and in our marketplace, and upon her passing, it's kind of died out, right? It's become something else.
Well, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I did have a cassette of Selena around, but when I drove from Houston to San Antonio, where the filming was done, I brought along with me. I went to Best Buy or whatever the
right.
And I got about 4 or 5 CDs, however many she'd recorded up to that point, and I was just listening to them in the car going down, and after a while, I had to stop. I had to turn on sports talk or something because it was so beautiful. And like I say, so life affirming. And again, it's like, oh no, gone too soon, all the cliches. But when I got to the set, yes, like I said, the people were cognizant of the fact that, this was a movie they wish they hadn't been making, but they were damn sure enjoying the fact that they were telling her story. They were proud of the fact that they were telling this story.
That's pretty cool.
Jennifer Lopez she knew what a big, career opportunity this one, but what a big responsibility.
Good
Yeah, I
word.
don't know if she'd been to Texas prior to that, but once she set foot in Texas and saw how important Selena was, I'm sure
Oh
she,
yes, oh
oh,
yes.
this is where we're going. Okay.
Right, and there's no turning back.
I know.
Exactly, exactly. Well, the fact that this movie was just recently re-released, as this is the 25th anniversary,
Right.
that also speaks volumes to what we're articulating right now. I mean, this film still, is so important, and we're talking about it. We're embracing it, we're celebrating it, celebrating Selena. This is some good stuff.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, like having grown up with her in a sense, musically as young adults and into adulthood, there's a lot of us of that generation, right? That 18, 20-year-old generation that we were doing this, and those we're helping carry that along because in some ways she helped get us be allowed us Latinos in Texas to be seen by a greater audience around the country, right? So there's Tejanos down here, right? It wasn't just those people down there in the South, right?
Right.
Having that, through her voice and through her legacy, that national, international platform allowed us to be seen. And I think that's part of the affinity for I know my culture to really, hold her in such high regard because she helped basically put us on the map in that way.
May I ask a question? How did the term black, wait, was it Black Madonna? No, Mexican Madonna. Is that what she was called?
Yeah.
Was that it? Mexican Madonna, right? How did that come to be, Rodney? Did you ever
I think it's
learn
just
that?
someone
That
found a correlation between
uh-huh.
her rise to fame and perhaps Madonna at the time was a huge worldwide artist at the time. Strong female, again, very empowered, body positive, all these things. And perhaps someone on our side decided that's what she's doing. She's on that trajectory. Now,
Uh-huh.
she would have never been as perhaps revealing as Madonna was.
Well, no, wait. Some of those outfits she wore on stage, I could see,
Yeah, but that's about as
Madonna
far as
looking
you
at that
go.
and going, wait, I need one of those.
Yeah, but I don't think you would have got as far as Madonna gone. That's
No,
what
no,
I'm
no,
saying.
no, no.
Not with that daddy. Also,
Oh
Oh,
no, oh
you
no.
would
no,
have
for
reeled
sure,
her in, right?
for sure, right? So
Right, right.
I think some DJ, or from the first time I heard it was from a radio person. I'm not sure if
Okay,
they were the one, but I think it was at that time that was a parallel American artist that she could have
okay.
measured up against.
Gotcha. I know we've got to wrap this up, but if I can just ask the two of you separately, when we talked a little bit already about the legacy that she left and she would have left had she still been here, just tell me one thing that young people who are trying to understand what it's like to see someone like a Selena penetrate this world. What would you want to say to them? How should they view her? How should they look at the totality of what she embodied?
Well, how would I tell a black person, a black young woman? You see Lizzo?
Yeah,
Well, she's proud of herself.
yeah.
Don't let anybody at any time ever in your life make you feel bad about yourself. And it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. I mean, she did embody. I keep going back to the term embody, but I mean, she did represent.
Yeah.
You know, the anti stereotype, the anti image. She's saying, okay, like, okay, Madonna can do that, and so and so can do this, but you can be you because look, I'm being me.
Right, right. No pretenses, no falsehoods. Rodney, what about you?
Interestingly, a lot of things that we're talking about in women empowerment in this era, right? She was doing that in her time, right? And I think it helps to show that, yes, even though it was still being done then, we're still talking about it 25 years later. We were talking about it 25 years before her, right? The idea is that as a young female, being empowered for what you believe in, being your authentic self, that is what she chose to do. When they told her you can't do this because you don't speak Spanish, she still did it. When they told her you can't wear that because it's too, she still did it, right? She was very self-aware of her, who she was, not only that, she knew she was responsible in some way for all these other young ladies out there to
Yeah.
set a good example for them and blaze the trail for them because they were going to come along sometime later, right? So she was very aware of it. It wasn't one of those, I'm just doing this for me things. She knew she was in front of and influencing thousands, if not millions of people before she even knew it. But
Well
she
said.
carried that responsibility. And then that was something that I think young people can learn from that. When you seek that limelight, it's not only a privilege, it's a responsibility.
Wow.
And she
Yeah.
definitely,
She
definitely.
fulfilled that. She fulfilled that. Well said, both of you. I'm so glad that we were able to have, I feel like Carol Burnett this time together, but we really did have such a great discussion. And I hope that we brought some honor and dignity to Selena and her legacy. And I want to thank you both for joining us today on the Ridgefield Playhouse Diversity Film Series. Joe Leydon and Rodney Alejandro. And Rodney, I know you got to go. You've got a flight to catch in seconds. So we're grateful and we're appreciative. And I want to also, of course, thank the Aquarion Water Company for always sponsoring this bonus content. We appreciate you immensely. And please join us the next time when we have our new edition of the Diversity Series. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
All
you.
the best to you both. Thank you.
See you, Joe.
I'm Cheryl Washington. See you again.